Hello, everyone. It's been such a wonderful event. I want to say thank you to everybody who put this together. My name is Suzanne Tillman. I'm Dean of the College of Business at the University of Montana, but that's not why I'm up here. I get the honor of introducing Elke Govertsen. She's a dynamic entrepreneur and a seasoned consultant, and she thrives at the crossroads of content, culture, conflict, connection, and community. I'm going to deviate for 1 second and say she is an incredibly warm, generous person who gives of her time, her talent, her treasure to lift others up. Elke is the visionary founder of Momaload, which has been heralded as America's best parenting magazine, and served as Chief Community Officer at My Village, a 2019 Bozeman-based startup childcare company that helped women launch and run educational daycare programs in their homes. She's an internationally recognized speaker and facilitator. Elke brings her unique blend of insights and experience to diverse audiences around the globe. In the words of George Brandt of Forbes magazine, quote, there are influencers of influencers, and then there's Elke Govertsen. Oh, yeah. So, be prepared to be inspired and empowered. Please welcome Elke.
Thanks, Susan. I just want to bring you with me everywhere. That's fantastic. And thank you for being here and for showing up for Montana and for showing up for yourselves. And for those of you who put this together for us. So it's an honor to be here. I was born in Montana, mostly raised in Alaska, but all of my business experience has been in Montana until recently, and now I never work in Montana. So it's just such a treat to plug back in and to see how many new people have started to gather. So I'm Elke, and this is what it was like as I was starting my company. I do only have 2 children. This was a great photographer who just went for the feeling. But I'm going to just do a little bit of my story, and then we're going to do some stuff together that's about you. So I grew up in Montana until I was 10 when we moved to this was our house. My mom married her high school sweetheart from Alaska, and we lived in what is and was an abandoned mink farm. We lived in one of the mink pens. The very back end of that building had walls, but we had to walk through all of the abandoned cages to get to our house or to our home. And we didn't have plumbing or electricity. We had to take a boat to another island to go to school when the weather was good enough, so there was a significant gap in my education. I was exceptionally privileged living in this place. I was very well loved. We had incredible, because it was Alaska, we didn't experience food insecurity because of hunting and fishing, so we had lots of food stability. And that town that we would ride the boat to go to school had a really amazing library. And that was like the lifeline. So support your public library, because, yes. Oh, I'm just really raspy. So it's going to get worse before it gets better. One of these days I'm going to wake up and it's going to be like Stevie Nicks. Yeah, but I do apologize for that. It's a long story, I can tell you. Some of you know it, but I have a trachea injury. And so it's there. But yeah, so we lived in the mink pen, and I didn't know the word for entrepreneur, but I was one. After we moved away from the mink pen, my first business was I raised doves and sold them to magicians. because we had this abundance of cages that we brought with us from the mink pen. So I was like, what am I going to do? I'll raise birds. I only knew 2 magicians, so the business didn't go very far. In high school, well, actually in middle school, my stepfather taught me to weld, and in high school, I worked 20 hours a week as a welder. I built aluminum boats with him, and then I would get outsourced out to other projects because I was really tiny. So I could get into all of these places and nooks and crannies on big boats, small boats, and do repairs. And then a buddy and I started another business that was called Hot Water, and I would build the aluminum snorkel stoves, and he would build the wooden tanks, and we made hot tubs. So that was my side hustle through high school. When I first moved back to Montana after college, I worked for Eagle Mount, which is a Bozeman-based nonprofit that's incredible, that does quality of life and services for people with disabilities and terminal illnesses. I don't know if terminal illnesses, but cancer, yeah. And I was living in Missoula. They had a branch that they were starting in Missoula, so I was the program director of that for a few years. And then I got very, very sick. I got typhoid, had a bunch of emergency surgeries, which is hence the trachea injury, and I flatlined twice at 25, and that's a whole story. But what it did was it really reset my clock on what risk was. So from then on out, the businesses got bigger, the risks got bigger, but they didn't feel very risky because I was like, this is not the worst thing that could happen. Like, if this business doesn't work, this is not the worst thing that could happen. If everything goes poorly, I'll move to Alaska and live on a boat. If everything goes amazingly, I'll move to Alaska and live on a much bigger boat. So, like, keeping your best and worst case scenarios really tightly linked, not so far apart, makes risk real easy. But with that, I then found out I was pregnant a year after being very sick. This has nothing to do with pregnancy, by the way. But I was really sick, really scared, and then I found out I was pregnant, and I didn't know, and Eagle Mount had decided not to have a Missoula chapter. So I either had to move to Bozeman, which isn't a bad thing, or I needed to find another job. And so I finagled my way into a Pilates training program while I was pregnant with some random grant that I got. And I'd never done Pilates before. I just had written about having massive abdominal surgery and how Pilates was going to be just the thing for me, and I somehow won. So I got to move to Portland while I was pregnant, do Pilates training, and came back to Missoula and started a bunch of prenatal Pilates classes at physical therapists around town because I was pregnant, and that was the only class I figured I could teach. And so to this day, I'm actually a very good Pilates instructor, but I'm terrible at Pilates because I could never do it because I learned it all when I was pregnant. So I can show you what to do with your legs, but don't ask me to do a roll up or anything. I passed the torch of the Pilates on to Sam Schmidt, who's here with Alpine Physical Therapy, who is a much better instructor and physical therapist and all those things. She also took very good care of me when I was sick, so shout out to Sam. So then, okay, I won't talk about myself this whole time, I promise, but we moved on to the bigger risks. I didn't have any money. I was like a new mom. We were barely pulling it together. My husband, who's gone on to start other businesses, but at the time was a bike messenger and a drummer in a bluegrass band with your uncle. And I think between the two of us, we were making like $800 a month when we had our first son. And we were just living with roommates. We were pulling it off. And I was a young mom. I was really scared. I met some other people who started being honest about what was going on, and I got really fired up about them, these other moms, this community. And I started throwing a party called Mother's Day Eve, the night before Mother's Day, where we would get together with each other, and we would spend Mother's Day with our families, but Mother's Day Eve was about us and our shared experience. And the first year I threw the party, 45 people came, and I was like, wow, people love this party. The second year I threw the party, it was 457. And I was like, can I swear? Yes, yeah, okay, I was like, holy shit, this is a real situation, this is amazing. there's probably something there. I'd never taken a business class. Nothing was triggering to me like, monetize this. I was like, oh man, I was just like, we got to do something. So I woke up in the middle of the night, and my husband says he's going to put this on my gravestone, but I was like, so I have an idea. And he says, he always knows that things are about to go like shenanigan directions when I say that to him. And I was like, these women want to be together, and it's not about the party, and it's not about the prizes I'm trying to give them, or I can't get them to even like be quiet to give away a gift certificate or something. They want their stories told, and they want to hear each other's stories. So I launched a free local print magazine in 2008, which is the worst business model at the worst time ever. Except that we hit a zeitgeist moment. It was I think Facebook was just kind of getting going, but you couldn't find communities of like mind anywhere. There wasn't tools for that. And it was right at kind of this beautiful moment on the internet. There was one. This beautiful moment on the internet where it was really about writing. It was really about writing and storytelling. And blogging at that time, you had to be a kick-butt writer. You weren't an influencer, you weren't hyperlinking, there weren't affiliates, you weren't selling anything. The only way to get people and traffic to your site was they had to want to go there. You had to pull people in instead of push content out. So these incredible writers were out there, and I was like, let's just have people tell their first-person stories. There were no experts, there was no weight loss, there was no how to throw a perfect party. There was nothing like that. It was first-person, user-generated content from people who we always went for the gutsiest, most irreverent, most meaningful kind of content. So this terrible business idea, this terrible business model, within a year of launching the print magazine, the website came after, which is an antiquated, also time-stamped thing. Within a year, we had paid subscribers to our free publication in all 50 states and 10 other countries. And it was a whole other kind of thing besides word of mouth, because all I was doing was putting out these print magazines in Missoula. And people were taking them to the post office and mailing them to their sisters, to their college roommates, to their moms. We distributed at the Missoula airport, and it was like us or Sky Mall. Like, that was all you had. And so I would get notes from random single 65-year-old men who had read Mama Load all the way to Minneapolis, and they wanted subscriptions for all the women in their office. And so we didn't even start with a subscription program. So all of a sudden we had this thing going on, and we started getting writers, because the biggest engagement for us wasn't likes or comments or shares. The biggest engagement was, I want to tell my own story. So all of a sudden we had content coming from everywhere. The business was still a local ad-supported business. Things were wild. The whole thing was wild. Eventually I found myself speaking at Ad Week in New York City to all of the big agencies. And then I was only supposed to speak for a day. I was always such a bootstrapper. I was sleeping on someone's floor, and I'd gotten miles from probably someone in this room to get to the event. And there I was at Ad Week. They brought me into all of the big agencies to talk about authentic content. And they were just like, how do you get so much authentic content? And I was like, how do you have so much money? It's not that hard. All we did was let people tell their stories, and we didn't change them for our own purposes. We let them tell their stories, and then they were like, oh, I see myself in there. And I'm like, that's because you wrote it. It was almost like a sleight of hand of holding up a mirror, and they were like, gosh, that's me. And I'm like, it is. So we wound up getting to do a ton of amazing stuff, amazing partnerships. Some of our events are still being licensed. Mother's Day Eves are still celebrated around the world. And Mama Load, we had passionate fans. Here's one. By the time it was done, we're at it's not even done, but at 3,500 stories. We had stuff all over the world. There was so much happening and so much momentum, and it was such a wild ride. And I, burned down because I was bootstrapping and scrappy and, sleeping on floors, and we're doing all this stuff. I was also the primary caregiver of an aging parent. I had kids. My marriage at the time was actually struggling considerably, and I was dealing still with my own illness. So the hustle and grind, the key word on that is grind. And if you think about something getting ground, that's like to dust. Like grinding, I don't think, feel what you want, isn't the goal. Grinding's not good for you. It's not good for the ground beef. It's not good for us either. So that was really hard for me because it was sort of fear of I didn't have much money. It was sort of excitement of all the opportunities and all the invitations. So I took some time off, and I just went to my team, and I was like, I don't even have the juice to sell this. We just need to, tomorrow, take a break. And I put what I still think is the best out-of-office reply ever on my email that the subject line said, "I will never read your email." And the body of the email said, I know a lot of you in this room actually got that email at some point. The body of the email said, "I'm burnt out, I'm taking a break, and the kind of break that I need doesn't look like the stress of something piling up while I'm gone. So when I come back, with no date, mind you, I'm gonna archive everything and you can resurface it." And I did that for about 6 months. And I thought I was, I will never read your email. That could also go on my gravestone. Somebody tell my husband. The second bullet, she'll never read your email. But it was a significant break, and it was also significantly scary. I wasn't financially set up for that break, but I had made myself really sick. And so it was like a tender process where I was really scared that I would never be able to go again or with the same speed. I came back, and people actually had loved that email so much that everyone wanted to hire me. They were like, "Oh, she's got boundaries, she's so on brand, and she's putting the mama in mama load," and I was just like, thank you for seeing it that way. But I got a lot of really cool opportunities. I was very blessed to come out of that. And before I could dig back in on mama load, I was hired by My Village, which was started by Elke who's from Bozeman. She still holds the record for the largest seed round raised in the history of Montana. They were like, "You can't raise money in Montana. It's hard to raise money as a woman." And she was like, "Here, hold all my babies." And went out and did it in one hot minute. And she's a star, if you don't know her. And she was tackling childcare, and so she brought me in as chief community officer. When I stepped away from that, I started doing consulting work at that nexus that Suzanne mentioned. And I often actually have the good fortune of working with Elke on a lot of projects. We call it 1-2 punch. It's not the name of a business. That's just what happens. We often get hired, and we're always bringing each other in. When you get the chance to be at a mic and you want to make sure you say other people's names, always, if everyone in this room every week said the name of another woman in a chance for opportunity, a lot could happen. So check out Elke. I'm also writing a memoir about growing up in the mink pen and how that, I think it would probably be sold as a survival book, but I don't think of it as that way. And then a little nonfiction piece too about Fambition. So now we're gonna move over and talk about Fambition and you guys. So people, as a woman, I was always asked on panels. I'd be on panels with all men, and they'd be like, "Elke, tell us about work-life balance." And I'm like, why are you only asking me? And I just was like, I have a family and I have an ambition, and they're kind of, at this point, just messed up and one and the same. So I started calling it Fambition. But for people who don't have a, traditional family, it's really about like, I have a purpose, and I also have people in my life that love me, and often those things feel like they're in conflict. You're like, I want to save the world, but boy, I'm messing up my marriage to do it, or boy, I'm not showing up in the way I want to show up because all the good stuff went external instead of home or to my friends or to my family. So here's a few things I learned. I used to say I'm sorry all the time, and everything was working. I was growing a business, things were fantastic, I was getting accolades and recognition, and everything I was messing up at home, I was like, I'm sorry for this, I'm sorry for that, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And then because I wasn't trained in business school, I was such a baby entrepreneur, and so many people would help me out, and I just tried to learn everything I could learn. But I remember reading an article in the Harvard Business Review, so it was about being a CEO, and they were like, don't ever say you're sorry. And at first I was like, what a, sort of dick move. But what the article actually said was, you're centering yourself in that moment. You're starting it with an I. So if you're late to a meeting, instead of being like, I'm sorry, I was late, I was stuck in traffic, you say, thank you for your patience. Thank you for waiting for me. Thank you for, forgiving this. And so you just kind of remove yourself as a center. And I was like, that's really good. I don't have a boardroom and a big team like that, so I'm gonna use that at home. And so I started really with my kids when I would miss something, because you just sometimes do. Instead of being like, I'm so sorry I missed your play, I'd just be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for, bringing these stories to me. Tell me what you're excited about. And I would just keep it about them, even though I was sorry. I don't mean don't ever feel sorry. Save it for when you do something wrong. So turning your sorries into thank yous. So close your eyes for a quick second and think of one really time you just blew it. This is fun, huh? Just one time that you blew it and you wish you could have a do-over and you maybe let someone down. Okay, you can open your eyes. You can leave that super fun space of remorse. And just pick someone at your table, and you don't have to tell them what you did, but pretend they're the person you let down. And instead of saying, I'm sorry, say thank you for. Just reframe it, just one. Some sort of thank you for waiting, thank you for forgiving me, thank you for learning the lesson. Okay, bring it back. So you get the exercise. You get the concept. Just try it. Try it next time you want to say, I'm sorry. Just remove yourself from the center. My second lesson is it grows as they grow. So for those of you who, I know there's a few babies in the room, and good on your mamas for being here. And those of you who have kiddos in childcare somewhere, good on you for being here. It just grows as they grow. The time grows, the opportunity grows, the space grows. And so being patient of that idea of juggling it all, that's a whole different metaphor if you're I'm gonna juggle these 300 balls one a day for the next 300 days. That's a much easier load. So giving yourself the space. So these are my kids when I was doing Mama Load. And this is them last year. The same photographer. We're now much more obsessed with our dog than our kids. And the photographer also grew up in Montana, Holly Andres. Again, say other people's names all day long. She's now a professional photographer for the New York Times. Total badass. And this is my boys. They're very beautiful. And I felt like with them, I did a perfect gymnastics routine of having my own thing and not losing my identity until the last 2 years. And then I just bombed the routine. I fell. And I was like, you are my world, you are my identity, you're gonna leave me. And they're very gracious with me. And so now I'm an empty nester. My kids are 21 and 19, but they keep coming back. I cried my face off multiple times with this is it, this is over, I'm never, I have built a house for 20, boys. I live in the Mojo Dojo Casa house, and I'm here by myself. And the reframe that I've come up with about empty nest, because I was massive anxiety and massive deep nostalgia, and I just couldn't function. And I was well, nostalgia's the past, anxiety's the future. Where can I get this in the present? Because what's happening in the present is we're changing, but it's okay. And my kids literally come home every, one has withdrawn from college twice. Actually, both have withdrawn, I don't know, buy tuition insurance. It's the best money I ever spent. It's a real thing, I'm not joking, get it. I don't care how old your kids are, remember this. So instead of empty nest, how I've been calling it now is open nesting. And it's really nice. And there's a funny to it, which is it's like an open marriage, or what I would assume, where you never know who's coming and going and what are the rules, and I don't know, and my feelings are always hurt, but I'm trying to be cool. But the idea of the open nest actually is that they can come and they can go, and so can I. And that was the part I was really missing. So now I'm hey, thanks for watching the dog. I'm out of here. And my 19-year-old recently told me, we just can't wait to see what you do with all your potential, Mom. And I was well, first of all, you have no idea what I've already done. Second of all, thanks. I needed to hear that. And so with that, I think that it's really important, it really just comes down to love, right? And so you know what love looks like. We're going to just take a minute. You have a full-size piece of paper on your tables with this fun little thing. So think of who you love the most unconditionally. It could be your kids. It could be your partner. It could be your illicit lover. It could be your family. If you don't have that person who you would want it to be, and I want you to stay with me here because we have to move through this kind of quickly. So I want you to take a pen, and you're going to write, there's a deer. This is like Mad Libs. This is love Mad Libs. And dear, and then write their name on your piece of paper. So if mine was my kids, it'd be Dear Boone and Dimitri. And then I want you to fill in, I want you to see, and we only have a few minutes for this, so no paragraphs, just I want you to see what? The world? I don't know. And I hope that you are. I hope you believe. Never let blank get in the way of blank. You deserve blank because blank. And then that letter is signed, Love Me. So finish up your letter. You guys really love people hard. You're going big. All right. Okay, so sit for a second and look at your letter. And this is proof, this is written proof that you know what love looks like. So you're going to turn to your partner again. And what's going to happen is there's a couple rules. You're going to only read what's on the page. Don't start yet. You do not get to edit with I put a period there on purpose, no editing. You're reading what's on your page. No contextualizing, no caveats. And what you're going to do first is cross off the name at the top, dear, whoever you put, and please write your first name. Oh, so hard. Write your first name. Oh yeah, you might want your Kleenex, your napkins. Okay, you have to do it. Now turn to your partner, say it, take turns saying it out loud to each other. No contextualizing. There's a lot of chatter for these rules. Shh. Shh. Of the... Are you doing it? Find your partner, read your letter. With your name. Okay, everybody, real quick, come back to me. Come back to me. It's so hard. You now have someone that you just committed. Oh, that got your attention. Good. You do look beautiful. You just committed out loud to someone else that maybe you don't even know, that you know what love looks like, and I'll be damned if you don't need to also love yourself like that much. Every time I've really blown it with my family or the people I love the most, it was because I wasn't actually really feeling good about myself. So dig in on that. So what are the last two words that you just said? Oh, yeah, there you go. So tricky. And so with that idea, I put this at the end because you have to touch your phones, but I had a mentor once told me, I was like, God, my life is a sprawl. And she said, you calendarize by prioritize. You calendarize to prioritize. And she said, it's like budget to actuals. If you want to say what your priorities are, and then you pick up your phone and you look at your calendar and you go, oh crap, those priorities are not what's showing up on my calendar. I can say they're my priorities, but I'm not calendarizing that. So I can't actually own it. So pick up your phone, please. Find sometime next week, half hour or an hour, because that's what automatically comes up on your phone. And you're going to put them is the name of that event. Make it repeat, please. And that's a time to love the people you love. So you call them, you buy them a gift, you send them a note, you text everyone you went to college with, just some group of people that you love. Find another window, also an hour. You don't get 15 on this one. And you just put me. And that's when you just even find your little letter you just wrote and hold yourself accountable. Make that one also repeat. So you've calendarized to prioritize. And the last thing I think that's also just important, this isn't about family and love. This is about us as a collective. I've talked about saying each other's names, bringing in other women, bringing people forward. Also, when you have the mic, share the mic. I'm standing at a mic right now. I want to shout out Native Women Launch. If you did not get to hear their stories yesterday and about their services, you can go to nativewomenlaunch.com. They offer classes for Native women to learn entrepreneurship and business skills and all kinds of things. They also can connect you with people from their programs and from their communities who offer services, art programs. If you want to hire, reach out to them. If you're looking for social media and production, art, fashion, it's all there. So I also want to recognize there's women in this room who are running for office. Please stand up. Oh, there's one. Wait, there's another one. Where is she? There, stand up. So learn their names, say their names. It's not about whether you agree with their politics. It's about the fact that they're putting themselves out there, and that's important for all of us. So share the mic. Thank you so much for having me. I have a newsletter. It's where I ponder it all. Mama Load still exists. It's actually getting pitched as a TV show right now, so who knows what will happen with that. I'll let you know. The newsletter is erratic. I'm sure you're shocked. And it's free. There's a paid option. Susan Carsonson's the first person who ever paid for my newsletter, so thank you. This room is full of people who built this story. It's not just my story. So thank you to all of you. Thank you, Candace. And thank you for having me.